Myles Garrett in the last 4 seasons has more 14-sack seasons than the entire history of the Washington football franchise. And some of y'all don't want to trade for him because you'd have to give up Brandon Coleman.
Never read the comments.
So, this show is on video too. The website it then goes to is called youtube.com. You can go at Craig Hoffman. You get the highlights. You get the whole darn thing at the team 980. You then leave comments. We go through them. We pick out our favorite ones or our least favorite ones, the ones that we most would like to respond to. And we read them here on the radio. Some of them are funny. Some of them are more substantive. We always like to start off with a little palate cleanser, a little something to just get us going. And Anthony, some commentary on some of the guests we've had over the last week. First and foremost, yesterday and actually last week, we've had him twice in 1 week. Varun Shankar of the Washington Post was on talking about the Wizards and what they will do and then ultimately what they did do when we had Varun on yesterday. And it was Samuel Baroker, 404, says, I like this dude. Hopefully you can have him on the show more. Y'all were great together, and I appreciate the positive long-term view from you guys on the Wiz. I hope that Samuel, because he left this one on the first time Varun was on when he joined us live in person at Capital One Arena. I hope that Sam saw Varun on with us yesterday on the phone. We're already getting more Varun Shankar on the Hoffman
There
show.
we go, man. There we go.
Here for the people. This one made me laugh, though, and I gotta say, it's 10 times funnier because, again, this is way too stupid to make up. The YouTube name here is Sasquatch with Internet Access 2940.
Wow.
Yeah. We had Don Van Natta on last week, the Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who chronicled all of the terrible things Dan Snyder did and is probably as responsible as anyone for having Dan Snyder have to sell the team because he wrote the famous Snyder's telling his associates he's got dirt on the other owners, at which point the other owners were like, oh, really? You want to play these games? And that seemed to turn the tide. It was weeks after Don and his writing partner, Seth Wickersham, wrote that article that Dan Snyder announced that he was hiring Bank of America to explore a sale of the team. And so last week, we had Don on the show because he wrote a new article about how Dan Snyder was, quote, bleeping miserable watching the Commanders' success. And Sasquatch with Internet Access 2940 says, this dude has some good info.
Wow.
And I replied, I go, he's the guy who wrote all the stories on it.
Yes.
Like
Great
the
info.
actual guy. And then old Sasquatch says, yeah, he obviously has good sources and put together a large amount of info, creating a substantive story that we don't get often. I never heard of him, but I'm going to check him out now.
There we go, Craig. You're bringing the people and news that we need.
Thank God for me, because otherwise no one would know who Don Van Natta is.
Wow.
Man's a Pulitzer Prize winner. The man is one of the most awarded, like, just sensational capital J journalists in the game. And people don't know if they don't hear about him from the Hoffman Show, apparently. At least not Sasquatch with Internet Access. Oh, that really made me happy.
Wow.
There's 1,000% chance that I'm cutting up that clip and sending it to Don.
I'm crying.
All right. The big topic of the week on the chat, Anthony, on the thing that drew the comments was the Myles Garrett trade. And comments were mixed. Some folks in on it, some folks not. There's a couple that I wanted to highlight here. Philip Cuneo, 4089, says, buy big name players, just like Dan Snyder. Rick Watts, 6969. Nice. Albert Hainsworth, Dana Stubblefield, Bruce Smith. The list is long. These were all busts. I cannot stress how stupid these comments are, how in touch they are with reality. Just because someone is a big name doesn't mean it's a bad idea. Like, look at some of the teams in the Super Bowl. The Eagles traded for A.J. Brown, for instance. Like, there are teams that have made, Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers. They've been in multiple Super Bowls. Like, teams make trades for good players. The key is to actually have them still be good and not past their primes. And, have a runway ahead of them and to understand who they are as people. None of things that Dan Snyder ever did. And also, Dan Snyder shouldn't have been making football decisions. These wouldn't be Josh Harris moves. These would be Adam Peters, the guy who's good at this moves. And I did get a good chuckle out of a response, Anthony, from @blood-farts. Don't worry, farts is with a Z.
Good gracious.
It was in response to Rick's comment about Hainsworth, Stubblefield, and Bruce Smith at the end of his career. And he goes, "You think Myles Garrett would be a bust? Do you watch football?"
It's a great question.
I just know that in times of trouble, I can look to blood farts with a Z for the common sense that we all need in this world, Anthony.
Man, somebody needs it.
Somebody. Blood farts.
Yes.
With a Z. With a Z. But there were smart comments. There were good ones. This one I thought was, I disagree with this, but I thought this was an interesting way to put it. Sean Carey 7095 says, if Garrett is a 10, then I would prefer to use all those picks and our cap space to get 7 to 8 level players in more spots. People lose all reason just because Garrett is so talented. If we can get 2 7 to 8 level players in the draft and use our cap space wisely, it will be less risky, better long-term play, or a less risky, better long-term play. Have a little patience. I'm not saying getting 7 8 players, like 7 to 8 level players, is easy in the NFL. But I don't think that people fully appreciate, Ant, how much easier it is than getting level 10 players. Like, the Washington Commanders actually have a fair amount of 7 to 8 players. Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner this year, I think, played at a 7 to 8 level. Quan Martin, Jeremy Chin, like, half this deep. Mike Sainer still next year. I think we're hoping elevates to that. Hopefully Marshawn Lattimore is an 8 to 9 level player next year. Like, they actually have a lot of those if they retain guys and they play up to the level that we think that they're capable of. Dorrance Armstrong, I think he's a 7 level player. They need some 10s. That's the whole point. The reason that they got to the NFC Championship game is because their quarterback, as a rookie, unexpectedly was a 10. If you want to get past that, like, do the Eagles have a 10 on each side of the ball?
Yes.
They have Saquon. They have Jalen Carter. Do the Chiefs have a 10 on each side of the ball?
Yes.
Yes. They have Patrick Mahomes, and they have Chris Jones. Hello? Paging the common sensometer. Paging the common sensometer. Actually, I'm sorry, page. That's an item. I need to page a person. Paging the repairman for the common sensometer. We seem to have a break in the common sensometer. Getting the 10 is the hard part. Go get the 10. You can find 7s and 8s. Go get the 10. Huh. And then there's like this comment from Terry Coy, 3373. Winning consistently in the future is going to require upgrades at virtually all position groups. Hard to do if we sell the farm to get Garrett. That is what the draft is for. That is what free agency is for. Again, getting the 10s is the hard part. You want to actually upgrade at defensive end? Okay. Who's got a better chance to play next season as Dante Fowler did this one? Josh Sweat or Myles Garrett?
Oh, easily. Myles Garrett.
Oh, no. Josh Sweat would be like what Dante Fowler was this season. Right? Like,
in place of,
if I told you that Josh Sweat just does what Dante Fowler did last year, like, that doesn't actually upgrade the position. Or if he's a little bit better. If I tell you Myles Garrett has 15 sacks and is a stud against the run and is moving around the defense, and like, you just said you have to upgrade to win.
Yeah, you do.
Myles Garrett is the upgrade.
Yep.
Hello! Is anybody home? Yes. If you give up multiple draft picks and players and whatever for Myles Garrett, you then, if you want to sustain that success over time, have to draft well. You have to sign periphery free agents very well. The good news is you'll have a ton of money because you don't have to pay your quarterback. You have to pay Myles Garrett what is now like half quarterback money. And that's the other thing I don't think people fully appreciate. Oh, he's going to be expensive. Dog. Myles Garrett, to become the highest paid defensive player in football, I think would have to cost you about $34 million a season. Top quarterbacks are going to be signing for $70 million a season. By the time Jaden hits the open market, we're talking an $80, $90 million per year contract for Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, it's going to be scary.
It is, but like the cap, it will be reflective of the cap. It's not like he's taking up that much more space than Mahomes or Allen or Burrow is right now at the 55, 60 number. I think someone might have pushed 60 last year. Maybe it was Dak when he signed his. Someone got to 60 or is right on the verge of 60. So we're talking 60 this year. It might be 65. Maybe you get to $70 million a year. Garrett's going to cost you half of that. So that is an extra $35 million, even if you want to call it 25, because Jaden's going to make like somewhere close to 10 by the end of his rookie deal. Like, that is a lot of extra money to play with to fill in the gaps around. Not to mention, yes, you have to give up draft capital, but not all your draft capital. And you're trusting that Adam Peters does a good job. And like, look what the Rams have done. Yes, did they take a 1-year dip after they won the Super Bowl? Yes, that was part because Matthew Stafford was hurt. But, like, they made the trades for Stafford and for Jalen Ramsey, and they won a championship, which is, by the way, the point. And then they've now revitalized themselves and are competitive because they drafted really well. You're always going to have to draft well. But, like, drafting well to add to talent that's ready to be good right now. Talent that you draft takes time to develop unless you hit the utter jackpot in a guy like Daniels. Or Jared Verse comes in and is sick in year one. But if you can guarantee top flight production immediately, what more could you possibly want if you want to be competitive now? And so then you get to like James Taylor, 60-51. In AP, I trust. There's not a player you can draft that is better than Myles Garrett. If AP and DQ decide in the near future to trade for Garrett, I'm not going to complain about the price. Myles Garrett is a future gold jacket that makes the defense better instantly. If we got to beat Rocky, then we're going to need a hungry version of what we saw of Clubber Lang at the beginning of Rocky 3. I think it's both a movie and a specific movie reference because you got the Eagles and Rocky and the Philly and the whole deal. Chaz Moody, 2148. Something I said a little earlier. At some point, you have to pay these players. No player is cheap. Eagles were aggressive and traded for A.J. Brown. All of the elite teams do. Correct. You might have to then trade some guys out. Like the Chiefs, they've made some moves, but they also traded out L'Jarius Sneed. They felt confident they could replace him at corner, and they've been largely right. And by the way, Sneed somehow was awful this year in Tennessee. Corner's the weirdest position in the sport, man. It's not that I don't get it, it's that you cannot possibly get it. It's just unpredictable. One World Abroad 87.6 says, I've always felt that there are great players you can trade for, then there are Hall of Fame players. For a Hall of Fame player like Garrett, the only people not on the trade block are your team captains. And I think this is also correct. The idea that someone would be like, oh my God, we can't trade Brandon Coleman for Myles Garrett. Why not? I'm not trying to push Brandon Coleman out of town. I think Brandon Coleman's going to be a good NFL player. I feel a lot better about going to find a Brandon Coleman in the draft if I've got Adam Peters as my lead scout than I do finding a Myles Garrett because there aren't 5 Myles Garrett types walking the planet. Mm-hmm. Like, I just don't think that people that don't watch, like, people that watch the Commanders every weekend, but maybe don't watch as much of the rest of the league, understand how good Garrett is. And that's like another kind of weird thing that I think has come up in this, Anthony, is, oh, he didn't, and this is not a majority opinion, like, but there's been multiple comments from folks that are like, well, he didn't play that well against Washington this year. In a game he was hurt in? Did you watch the rest of the games? He had 14.5 sacks. I can't remember the last time a Commanders player had 14.5 sacks.
And this is also a guy that literally gets chipped or triple teamed like every play. It's not some plays, every play. So he's going to elevate the play of the Dorrance Armstrongs or, the Jazon Newtons where they'll have one-on-one matchups. Like, there's going to be so much attention geared towards him. And then the fact you have Frankie, you have B-Wags also, blitzing. Like, I don't know. I mean, it will be scary, man. It will be scary.
Let me give everybody some context here. Myles Garrett, where is his career? Let me just get this real quick. Stats. Okay. Myles Garrett has had 1, 1, 2, 3, 4 straight seasons of 14 or more sacks. He went 14, 14, 16, 16 since 2021. Okay? So 14 is the low number in the last 4 years for Garrett. There have actually, Anthony, in the history of the Washington Commanders, how many 14 or more sack seasons have there been in the history of the whole Washington franchise?
1,
3.
3.
And hilariously, 2 of them were in 1 year. In 1985, Charles Mann and Dexter Manley had 14 and a half and 15 sacks respectively. The next year, Manley had 18 and a half. That's it.
And that's it.
Myles Garrett, in the last 4 seasons, has more 14 sack seasons than the entire history of the Washington football franchise. And some of y'all don't want to trade for him because you'd have to give up Brandon Coleman. Do you think I made my point?
I think so.
All right. If I didn't, I mean, yikes.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.